This is Stephen Kotler, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hello, this is Dr. Raymond Moody, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, Cultural Creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. I'm Trey Downs, and this is Your Superior Self, the podcast that helps us reconnect with that greatness that is inside of us. And to help us reconnect with that source, I have Amy O'Keefe joining the show, the author of the book In Spirit. Amy has spent the last 25 years studying the works of spiritual masters and has successfully led seminars and workshops all over on the topic of spiritual growth. She also hosts the retreat called All Souls Weekend between November 5th and 7th. You can register for that over at her website, amyokeefe.com. One of the speakers that I do know is Kelly White, the psychic. She is amazing. She's awesome. I highly suggest that you listen to our previous podcast with Kelly to become more familiar with her. But if you go to amyokeefe.com, you can register and find out all the pertinent information that you may require. Amy also helps us talk about the topic of grief and what that looks like in our lives and how we can shed it to help us grow. And she does that in this clip.
You know, even though we're entitled to our pain or the grief we're going through or, loss and whatever that is, all of the human things that we go through that are really painful. But at the same time, in order to really have peace, we need to let go of them. Mm-hmm. And until we let go and make space, we really can't have that peace that we so desire.
I love all of that, but it can be hard to make space when you're grieving. It can be hard to allow peace to come in. But Ram Dass used to say, when you're grieving, grieve. Allow it to be. It is that. Honor that. It is a part of the process. It is a process. It is a road. It is a journey that you have to endure because it inspires growth at the end of that. It inspires peace after that. If you can't look back on a situation and say, and honor it, and know that you've learned something from that, or you've grown, or you've expanded, or you have somehow become a higher potential of yourself from that experience, and you're probably not out of that experience and you still need to go through the process. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Go to TreyDowns.com, leave me a message, let me know your thoughts, your stories, your journeys. I'm very excited about this conversation. So without further ado, here is the great and the powerful Amy O'Keefe.
Hey everyone, this is Amy O'Keefe, and this is Your Superior Self.
Perfection. Amy, thank you so much for joining. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. Your book, it is pretty unique. I love the picture of the cover. I didn't know what it was at first. I was kind of looking at it, and then all of a sudden you kind of see, obviously after reading the back and kind of reading your bio, I figured out pretty quickly after that. But the picture is fascinating. Why don't you give everyone like a little bit of a background on that?
Yeah, sure. So the picture on the cover of the book is, the way I describe it is really my friend Patty's spirit. So she had passed away a week before I had taken that photo, and we had a very close spiritual relationship. I, considered her a soulmate. And so I went to Colorado. I'm from Chicago, and I'd gone to Colorado where she was living with her mom and her brother to, they were going to do a memorial service for her there and pack up her things. And we were going to see the site of her car. She had passed away in a car accident. And so anyways, it had been a really tough week to say the least. And I was in some pretty deep grief. So the memorial service was sort of the last stop, the last day of the trip. And so at this point, I was really just beside myself in sadness and grief. But so this was now 1 week to the same time Patty died. So she had died 1 week prior, Thursday evening at sunset, 7:45. Excuse me. And So the memorial service began, and it was interesting because people were lighting candles and getting ready, and there was this incredible wind that really became a nuisance. Like the candles are blowing over the pictures, and so it was like, oh my goodness, is this Patty's spirit? I'm thinking to myself. And then shortly after, they started playing music, and they played the song "The Rose," not knowing, that's Patty's favorite song. Excuse me. So after they're playing "The Rose," and we're all just tears flowing, I just had to walk away for a minute and just sort of collect my thoughts. And I was just looking into the sunset thinking, wow, this is probably the last sight Patty would have looked at, because we're facing the same direction that she was facing when she was driving. And so the memorial service was along the Arkansas River, which is a river that she had river rafted on that summer. And so I just started talking to Patty the way that we would normally talk to each other. And I just said, I can't take any more of this sadness. I can't do this. And I instantly heard her say, like, of course you can't. Like, in the same way we would talk to each other. And it was just what I felt without a doubt. It's like she might as well have just been standing right in front of me. And it just suddenly dawned on me, like, this is something that Patty and I always said to each other is, I'll be with you in spirit. And I was like, I'm going to have to learn to connect with her on a whole nother level, like in spirit. This is what we learned. This is what brought us to this point. And so I took that picture because I had such a sense of peace overcome me. And I wanted to remember that, because thinking, you know what, the days and the years are going to be really tough. And I wanted to remember that moment of faith. So I took that picture as I really declared that we will always be with each other in spirit. And so then I got home, went back to Chicago. I had like 3 rolls of film to develop back in the day when you did that kind of thing, and went to the local pharmacy. And, during the course of our time while we were in Colorado, we, took all kinds of pictures of the site and of the sky. And, maybe we see a little rainbow here, and maybe I took a picture of a butterfly. So I forgot actually that I'd actually taken the picture at our memorial service at 7:45, and saying to her, we'll be with each other in spirit. And so they said my film was ready, and I had 3 rolls of film, and it was the very first picture on the top of all of my photos, was the picture at the memorial service in the valley. And it was like, I just had never seen anything like that in my life. This is 1995. I know today, we hear a lot more of afterlife experiences and connections, but even still, I really haven't seen anything quite like it. And it was just uncanny to me. I'm having a conversation with my friend in spirit at her memorial service, and she was tall and just this vibrant spirit in life. And it's like, you see this body and the wings. And I felt like her shouting out to me, like, I'm here, I'm here. And so it was pretty incredible. So that's the story of how the picture came to be.
Did you notice it right away when you saw it? Like, were you kind of like,
oh yeah?
Because how some pictures you take, like some of them, maybe that has something to do with the development of the film and all of that. I don't know, maybe like little orbs of light, this here and there. Maybe that is spirit. I just never really realized it. But seeing the first picture of the album come out like this shape, right?
Yeah.
Like it looks like an angel to me, right? I mean,
yeah, it's exactly what I thought. I just literally nearly fell on the sidewalk. I could not believe. And it's so interesting because, up to that point, our relationship was based on our spiritual journeys. And we had this incredible spiritual connection that really didn't come to evolve until our early 20s. And it really accelerated itself very quickly. So we were 21, and all of a sudden began having these really deep conversations. And at the same time, we were both on a quest, if you will, to grow and evolve spiritually. And we came to the realization too, that everything happens, in your life for your soul's purpose and your spiritual growth. And so it's kind of like, you're talking a big game, and then, someone passes, and it's like, you really have to, for myself, I had to put that to the test. Like, okay, if we're spiritual beings, I believe that our spirit continues to evolve into the next life. It's not that spirits are energy. And this was something very different than I was brought up to believe. I was raised Catholic, and I was taught that when you die, you go to heaven, or hopefully not the other place. And our spirits go into, we are mortals. We are not spiritual beings, actually. So yes, to answer your question, I did know without a doubt it had to be that. It was just based on the conversations that we had had. And something else that happened is, before Patty had moved to Colorado, like I said, we were going through this accelerated kind of spiritual growth and would have these conversations. We're 22 years old. And so, yes, we're having lots of fun, but we're also, I felt like, having conversations that felt, really just divinely inspired. And so when she had made her decision to go to Colorado, and it wasn't going to be forever, but, she moved there, we said to each other, we're both moving on to a place, or taking, we're moving on so that we can continue to learn and grow, and then only to come back and share what we've learned with each other and to continue to evolve. And to me, that conversation was really preparing us to say, she's going one place and I'm going, the other, and we will both continue to evolve and to grow, and only to come back to each other. And I have conversations with her all the time. So our friendship has evolved, which is super cool. Death does not have to be a final thing. I mean, I think it's really important to go through the grieving process, to understand that that person is not physically with you. And there is a huge grieving process, but you can communicate telepathically with your loved one, with someone close to you, ask them for a sign. Just all the spiritual growth I've gone through since Patty's passed, I know she's been there, right beside me.
So talk about the spiritual growth, right? Like, so you were pretty young when you guys were having these accelerated conversations. And you realized early on that, we are energy, we are spiritual beings having a human experience here on earth. Which I never doubted that we would go somewhere, right? But I was like you, it's either heaven or hell, right? Like I didn't really know what it looked like for us. And the more that I grow spiritually, the more that I investigate, the more that I become curious and really dive into the literature of like channels and guides and things like that. It's funny because I can read like 3 or 4 different channelers, right? Like the people that like I kind of resonate with, not someone like who is kind of like starting their own cult kind of thing. You know how you can feel like when you read something that it resonates with you or not. And
Absolutely.
I think the big key here is like you have to have it resonate in the heart, right? Like you have to feel it. And if it feels good, then you keep following that rabbit hole. If not, then you kind of put it away and say, all right, well, maybe I'm not ready for that yet. Or maybe it's something that it just isn't for me, which is fine because not everything's going to be for you.
That's right.
But like Paul Selig and like, I'm trying to think,
Love him.
oh man, he's awesome.
Yeah.
Like Jane Roberts. I'm a big fan of hers. And there's a couple of them I'm forgetting right now, but like their message really is the same. I'm Ramtha, like I'm kind of, I don't know if you read J.Z. Knight's book or not. That kind of hit me a little different. Like that was, I'm starting to learn more about Christ consciousness right now. I'm starting to fall into that because I just started reading Paul Selig's book, The Kingdom, and I was reading something else, and then watching what is her name? She channels like Sanaya or something like that.
Yes.
Do you know she was just on a documentary at Amazon Prime?
She didn't write Oneness,
Suzanne
did she?
something. Suzanne.
Okay.
I cannot remember her name. Sorry, Suzanne. But it's like this Christ consciousness, right? Like I've listened to Paul Selig for years, and I'm like, just the words, I am word, I am word, I am word, I have come, I know how I serve. I've always related myself to like the Christ, like Christ, like when he says the Christ, the monad, like
Mhm.
I'm like, all right, well, I'm equal to that. I am that. Like I'm just like Jesus. Now it's starting to click something else. Now it's starting to think, am I God? Like, am I that? Right? Like,
Right.
can you talk about
Yes.
that? Can you let people know what the Christ consciousness is and like what that means?
Well,
I don't know.
I
Maybe
don't think
because
I
I'm
could do
just
it as well
curious.
as Paul Selig, but I have to say, no, I really resonated with his book. And what I do love is just like you're talking about, is like you find a book as part of your journey, and it either really speaks to you, and then maybe you go a little bit further. Like, yes, I got Paul's second book. I have it next to my bedside actually, and I'll pick it up. If something happens, yes, when you say word I am word and word I am word in this intention. So I just love, yes, the Christ consciousness. I think it's a bit of a mystery, but it is, yeah. And I think about also the Course in Miracles. That was a channeled book, and I was going through that and just thought to myself, who in the world could literally come up with this? This is divine information. Or when you think about, now this is a little different, not as much Christ consciousness, but it's a channeler's message, Abraham, Esther, and Jerry Hicks. So anyways, I don't know if that is, I think, no, that's actually a spirit guide rather than, Christ
No,
consciousness
I
coming
don't
through.
know.
But
Well, like, so my idea, I guess, of Christ consciousness is that you have this awareness that you are not separate from source. Like you're not separate from God.
right.
Like you are, like God is you. Like not, and
Mhm.
not, and people will get kind of sideways on that because they're thinking, what do you mean I'm God? Like, or you are God. Like, who are you to say that? And it's not,
Yeah.
if you put a name on it, like Wayne Dyer says with the Tao, like if the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. Same thing here is with God.
Yes.
The God that you put in the box by saying God and that small self, that small consciousness that kind of, paints that picture for you, a limited God. Because if you can name him and describe him, I mean, the God that is truly God, according to the channels and the mystics and the sages,
Mhm.
you cannot describe, you cannot word.
That's right.
Everything you look around you is life, is God. That is it. Everything
Yes.
is everything that is matter is vibration from that source.
Right.
So when they talk about the Christ consciousness, I am the word, Paul, from what my interpretation is that, that quote, word made flesh, we are that flesh from the word, from the source. And I mean, even Jesus said it, and I've quoted this a couple of times in the podcast where I think it's like John chapter 10, verse 34, where he states, the people are getting pissed because he's like basically saying that, you're calling yourself a God. You're calling
Right.
yourself God. And Jesus basically says back to them, he says, does it not say in your law that you are gods? Like,
Right.
so when I hear that Christ consciousness and what I've been picking up on is kind of like a click over, because I've always, and I'm just still kind of very easily stepping into this because it's so messed, because I'm Catholic too. It still messes with me, but it's like a lot of the people are saying, if you are here, you are from source. So that means you are God. And if you think about that, it messes with you. But you got to look at it from your life. You cannot be separate from that. And that's what Paul teaches. And it's like, man, it's just kind of like a new awareness, really.
It
And
really is. Yeah. And I read Return to Love by Marianne Williamson when in my early 20s. And the thinking is a little bit of the same, which was a new thought or idea to me, is that, God is love. Everything that is not love is not real. And we are co-creators with God. Therefore, we are love. And so God is really within us, is what
sure.
they're saying. And of course, then she introduces another idea where actually the Course does, is that a miracle is a shift in our perception. And the Holy Spirit, you pray to the Holy Spirit to experience a miracle, which is a whole other different line of thinking. But it's a really powerful one, I think, that is was another part of my spiritual journey, was because there was, a lot of pain I went through in my childhood, and I hate to just, keep saying that about the Catholic upbringing, but it was hard. You grow up thinking that you're a sinner, and I think not everybody maybe took it the same way that I did, or maybe you did, but I was like, I no longer wanted to believe that God didn't like me and that I was doing something wrong, or that, certain things that happen in my life were just because you're a sinner. Or it's just, after reading A Return to Love, I just really changed my thinking. Like, no, God is a loving God. I am God in a way of, just because God is love. And so that was a real turning point. And also the realization that, the shift in our perception, it's like, certain pain and things we go through. And I think about this with people who are going through deep grief. It's like, my prayer, my shift in perception was to heal. And, and healing is definitely a journey. But through that, I just learned, even though we're entitled to our pain or the grief we're going through, or, loss and whatever that is, all of the human things that we go through that are really painful. But at the same time, in order to really have peace, we need to let go of them.
Mm-hmm.
And until we let go and make space, we really can't have that peace that we so desire. And to me, that's another, I feel like, lesson I took from this picture. It was a moment of surrender. It was a moment of letting go. And when I let go and when I surrendered, is when I experienced, spirit in its real form.
So this took you down, you're still probably devouring books and YouTube channels and all of the research that you can get your hands on. But have you developed anything on your own, like intuition, any type of channeling, anything like that?
I have. Yeah, it's a good question. I'm much more in tune. I feel like I have a very strong sense of intuition. I can pick up on people's energies. It's funny you say that, because I had kind of a mini reading with this astrologist, and he'd said, you're someone who can't go in the middle of a grocery store, at 2:00 in the afternoon on a Saturday. I'm like, I can't. That is so true. I just don't. I feel it. I feel all the different energies. I have to go in the morning, or maybe, later in the day. But I am definitely feel like I have a heightened sense of awareness and energy. I pick up, yes, on people's energy, or even places in the neighborhood that just, you can feel like, maybe if there's some crime around or things like that, you can feel. And I think you've talked about this on your show recently. It's just like this collective consciousness, and you can feel it in certain places where there's an energy maybe of, and it's unfortunate if there's poverty or if there's violence. So yeah, I definitely have picked up on that.
Yeah, no, it resonates. It's this you just go into Baltimore City and you can feel the chaos. You can still feel the riots. It's just crazy. It just,
Yes.
even though they haven't been there in a while, you still feel the energy that's left over, that reserve. And that's why I have to go out in nature. That's why I have to go to the beach. That's why I have to go on my runs. It's kind of burn that energy, right? They burn that
Anxiety.
Yeah. Burn all that crap off, right? What are you doing right now? What besides your promoting your book and getting that out there, where are you at in your journey right now?
So, the pandemic definitely shifted things, but, in some ways I'm grateful. I think everybody has something they're grateful out of it. So to me, it's helped me really create a routine for myself, a spiritual practice that I wasn't always able to do because I was commuting to work and doing things like that. So that has made such a difference. And now it's something I just can't do without it. So it's the physical activity, being in nature, and then, my own spiritual practice. But I'm also hosting with a partner of mine a retreat. This will be, it's coming this fall in November 6th and 7th in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And you can read about it on my website or my partner's website, jenweigel.com. And it's called All Souls. And we started it, it'll be this year, in person will be our 3rd year, but this will be the 4th year. And Jen is a spiritual author. She's written several books and she's awesome. And actually it's funny because I feel like I met her through my friend Patty. She definitely, brought us together. And so Jen and I wanted to create a conference with some intuitives. She's connected with a lot of the people actually you've had on your show, and just people who are, spiritual masters and bringing together like-minded people who are all on the same path. And so it's really a blast because it's a retreat. There's great content. There's a lot of healing that goes on. And then, we have a super lot of fun and great dinner and just, dancing into the wee hours of the night. So we'll be doing that later in November. And then, hoping to get some other talks on the books this summer now that we can finally be in person.
That's awesome. I can only imagine what kind of energy is running around there.
You can only imagine. Yeah, you should come. It's a blast. Yeah. You should come. Yeah. You can be a guest.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I love all of that, right? Like I think I'm definitely dabbling in some meditation, channeling kind of thing, touching on some interesting material myself. And I think we're all intuitive. I think we're all super powerful beyond what our small mind can conceive, like just with the conscious, just with our, I guess the ego is just such a dickhead. Like it's like, it's so limiting. It's like limiting beliefs. It's like, it's telling you everything that you shouldn't be doing, why you shouldn't be doing these things, why you're not good enough, why it will never work out,
not worthy
and
enough.
what you're
Don't do it.
Yeah. And what you're just so much more powerful than that. And you cannot fathom what you can actually make or create with the universe, because one, like we were just talking about society, it's belief systems, right?
Yeah.
It's like everybody's trying to pull each other down. And then that's why it's so hard to be positive. And I believe that you can manifest things and be a co-creator with the universe. I believe that we can do that as long as we're in touch with the heart center and our vibrations are high, and we're attracting those things that are alike. And people will kind of listen to that and like, whoa, like that's not even accurate. But that's just the ego talking. That's like the left brain saying, well, show me proof. Like they want analytical proof about how you can do this. Right. And you can't, that's not how you create. It's not something that has a formula. It is trusting and having faith in yourself and the universe and being positive and vibrating at a higher consciousness level. And people hear that and they're like, what do you mean consciousness level? It's like you have to do the things in your life that produce that consciousness.
Totally agree.
Your brain's that receiver, right?
Absolutely. And, it's interesting. It's fear, and fear, is definitely creation of the ego, but will ensure that you never do connect with your true consciousness. It's like, well, I can't do that because I have to, be panicking about this, or I have to worry about this. And I can't really just let go and trust and allow. No, you don't manifest in a state of fear. And, it's also something I learned of this photo, and just, through the grief process, is just the power of letting go, the power of just really letting go and being okay with, well, I might be wrong. Maybe I'm going to be wrong about this. That's okay. It's all right to be wrong and to take a chance. Have you read Eckhart Tolle?
I have watched a couple of videos. I have not.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. So he talks a lot about the ego, and it just all makes sense. It just, and just to hear him say it over and over again, you just realize, like, I'm trying to be more conscientious of, is this fear talking? Am I, thinking in fear? Am I in spirit right now? Or where is this coming from? And anytime that I feel anxiety and you just, maybe you wake up feeling angsty, or you don't know where this energy is coming from, if you just sit or through a meditation, it's really, it's about fear. And I would say, that's in one way that I feel like my life has evolved in a better way, is I'm just so much more conscientious of that fear. So when that comes up, sometimes before it would go on for days and I just wouldn't even be aware, like, why do I feel like shit? Or why am I just so terrified to do something or to take a step forward? And it's just like, oh, it's fear. Okay, I've got to rework myself here, realign, connect with spirit.
What is your thing? Like, what are you co-creating with Universe? What are you working towards?
That is a good question. I'm working towards, well, it's interesting. About a month ago, or maybe it was longer, I had a session with Kelly White, and love her.
Love Kelly.
Yeah. And I had asked her, so what is my soul's purpose, my spiritual purpose, which I'd never asked an intuitive before. And she said, you're a healer, and that's what you came here to do. And that really made sense to me, because I feel like it's the reason I went through a lot of pain in my life. It's the reason I had the friendship I did with my friend and understood the spiritual lessons that I did, and went through, yes, my friend's death. I have a different perspective on what people experience when they go through deep grief. I have experience with what people go through when they go through trauma. And I work in for a sexual assault agency. So I work with people who have been assaulted, not directly, I'm not clinical, but raise money for them. So I see the kind of different traumas that people go through. And I feel like I have a perspective and compassion and empathy for what people go through. And so that is what, where my journey is taking me. I feel like my next step is I'm going to look into developing myself as a spiritual coach, and to continue sharing my story. There'll be times, I'll even see on the news, someone has lost someone tragically. And if there's a way to connect with them, I'll send them my angel picture with a little note and just say, just wanting you to know, your loved one is with you. And I'm so sorry for what you're going through. Just, there's just so many things that we're seeing, and we have been seeing, where people are going through so much suffering. And I just feel like not only now what I feel intuitively, but just like, what I've experienced, I feel like there's something I can do to make a difference in their healing journey.
It's beautiful. What have you had a conversation with your friend since she's passed, like through a medium or anyone like that?
I have, and it's interesting too. In the beginning, when she first passed, like, that's all I wanted. I was like, I'll go to any psychic I can find, even though there wasn't that many of them that I knew. Now I know all these amazing psychics and intuitives, but until I reached a certain point in my grief, where my acceptance and my faith that my friend and I could communicate. So I had the photo that I took, but then I also, was in this deep state of grief. So it was kind of like the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows. And so I would do a reading now and again, and it just was like, wow, it made me feel worse, actually, because you're just like so wanting to hear the right message that means something to you. But I've had many, actually, like, I'd say like in the last 5 years. And I feel like, there's times I'm like, I don't even need it, because I so rely on the communication that I am hearing. I can just say something to my friend and I'll just instantly hear a response. Or just even like looking over my notes for our interview, I was sitting in my kitchen, there's cardinals everywhere, did I see him previously in the afternoon? No, but like one after the other, there's butterflies, and it's like, thanks, Pat. But I did have one interesting one. It wasn't actually a reading. It was just a moment. I'd gone to a talk with a intuitive psychic. Her name's Susan Rowland. She's great. And my friend Jen, who partners with me on All Souls, said, I'm doing this talk with Susan tonight, a live event. You should come. And I was like, oh, I kind of have a busy day. And it was Patty's birthday. And I didn't tell Jen what I was doing. And I was going to see Patty's mom, which I do every anniversary and every birthday. And so I gave Patty's mom sunflowers and some roses, and she gave me a bouquet of sunflowers. So then I go to, and I just was like, it's Patty's birthday, so great to spend time with her mom. And I've gotten to a point too where I don't really need a sign, because I just feel the feeling. It's really just a feeling within that I know that she's with me. So I told Jen I would go to the event, which I did. And it was wonderful. And Susan is just a bright light and just wonderful. And so Jen and I were planning our All Souls conference. And I'm like, we need to have Susan at our conference. So I'm going to go down and introduce myself to her. So I just said, oh, I just, loved your talk. That was so wonderful. And she was just like, oh my gosh, you're just like beaming. And she's like, you are just this bright light. And I was like, oh, thank you. That's so nice. She's like, no, there's just bright light all around you. She's like, wait a minute, there's a giant sunflower in front of you. What does that mean? And I said, oh my God, Susan, my friend Patty's birthday. I gave her mother sunflowers. She gave me sunflowers. And the sunflower, before Patty, when we lived as roommates in her early 20s, we said to each other at one point, I gave her a sunflower, a hair accessory. I had a sunflower and a rose. And I said, you be the sunflower and I'll be the rose. And then she said, that way we'll know whenever each other sees, the sunflower or the rose, we'll know it's a sign of the other. So everybody gives me sunflowers, every anniversary I give them to her mom. So that was pretty uncanny. I thought that was pretty amazing.
Awesome. I love it. I love that. That's so unique. And people are always like, oh, explain the odds. That's just coincidence. And it's like, look, here's the thing, right? Like you can be analytical about things. You can be left-brained about things. How does that make you feel? Right? Like, I mean, what does it matter? Like God, Jesus, everything is subjective. Everything, your experience, your relationships with whomever it may be, who's passed, it's very subjective. Like I have conversations in meditation with my grandfather who's passed. And you know what? It doesn't matter what anyone says or believes. It's true in my heart. And that's all that matters.
I totally agree. And it's like you said, I mean, who cares? What do you have to lose? And it might be, if you've lost a loved one and you're still in a lot of pain, you just don't want to take that chance and open up your heart. I think some of it can be religious beliefs, that you just can't possibly think. You were raised to believe that, soul goes to heaven, we stay here on earth. But no, these, I write a lot about it in my book, these signs, like it was Patty's anniversary, her 20th anniversary. And, we have a radio station that plays a certain year every Saturday morning and all the songs, which is super fun. Anyway, so that Saturday they played 1994. That's the year that we lived in our apartment together right before and that was like our, pivotal year that we had. Then I heard 4 songs. I wrote them all down in a notebook because I could not believe it. And actually music plays a large role in my book. Every chapter is either the name of the title of a song or a particular lyric that, we connected with during that time. And then I was getting together with Patty's mom that day, and I went to the farmer's market, and because she died in August. And I don't know, I was just browsing around, and the farmer was like, handed me a bouquet of sunflowers and said, here, these are for you. Now what? I also had a very wild, I would call it a psychic dream the night that Patty died. And the night that she died, I talked to her 2 days before, and she was planning to come home from Colorado to Chicago because for a visit with her family. They were actually going to go to Ireland. And so, we were talking on the phone, and, I mentioned that she was river rafting that summer and someone had died on the river, and that really, really impacted her a lot. So anyways, we had that last phone call 2 days later on a Thursday. And I just felt so strange and so weird. That's, just the only anxious, just bizarre. And I remember falling asleep that night and seeing the clouds just pass by. And I just said, God, God, God. There was just something that I just felt like I wanted to, call it to God. So anyways, I have a dream that night. And in my dream, I was in a valley surrounded by the mountains. And I was holding someone's hand who was sitting on a picnic bench. And I knew that at sunset, this person was going to die. And we were just there to be with each other through the experience. So I kept looking over my shoulder for the sun to set because I thought, oh my gosh, when the sun sets, they're going to pass. And they were totally at peace. And I was just trying to be calm and at peace with them. It was so weird. We didn't say a word and just holding each other's hands, but I couldn't see their face. And next scene in my dream, I'm in a funeral parlor and they're the one in the casket and people are comforting me. So I woke up at like 5 a.m. and just and called my mom and I said, is everybody okay? And she said, yes. And then I was out in the suburbs that day with my sister and, was at my parents' house and my mom had come up and just said, I have horrible news. And I said, what? And she said, I said to her, Patty, and she said, yes. And I said, dead. And she said, yes. So back to your point, just like these things that are just unexplainable. It's just,
when did Patty pass? Like in relation to that dream, was it?
She had passed that night at 7:45. So it's interesting when you think about the travel. I don't know. He was with me, actually, I guess that would mean, because it's interesting when I think about the book Embraced by the Light and people who've had near-death experiences, they say they go to their loved ones. And
do you think that was it? Do you think that when you were sleeping, I think Bob Monroe talks about this in Out of Body Experiences, his first book, where he would go out his body during the night, and he would have he'd see he saw a kid, and the kid was I forget where it was at, but the kid came up to him and out of nowhere and was very wanted to stay close to Bob, and next thing you know, he goes away, and then 2 days later or a day later, Bob finds out that boy who was his neighbor or something passed away. So I wonder if that has any, maybe
I think so.
She came to you after she passed in the dream, right? Maybe you were having an out of body experience almost, or going back to, where we originated and kind of was preparing you a little bit.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I've read a little bit of Bob Monroe. And it's interesting now that you say it in that way, that makes sense. But regardless, I took it as when I found out that Patty passed, the evening before at 7:45, and granted my dream was at 3 a.m. But what also was uncanny is I'm in my dream in a valley surrounded by the mountains. That is where she died. So I was not surprised when we arrived at the site to see where it was. So it wasn't, any mountain cliffs or anything. It was just flat land, and she had a boulder for whatever reason veered over to the side. And actually the highway marker was 223. And then her mom had found a notebook, as she was clearing things out a couple weeks later, there was a piece of paper that just said 223.
I always see the number 444.
Do you?
Everywhere I go.
That's funny. I see 222.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah.
It's so funny, and it means 444. I googled it, and if anybody out there is listening and they find numbers, Google it, because most of the times it means something. 444 means it's bringing your awareness to that. Somebody is trying to bring your awareness to the time to tell you.
Yes.
And 444 means you're on your path, you're on your way. So it's
that's cool.
Yeah.
1111.
Yeah. I don't know what 1111 is. I see 333. We just went to Key West for not Key West. We went to Marathon, Florida for a getaway, and our room number was 333. And so now I see 333 everywhere. Yeah.
That is, it's uncanny.
It's pretty awesome.
Pretty cool.
Who has been the most, now that I'm finding that you're well read, who has been the biggest influence on you as an author?
I think it's really a combo platter. I feel like there's a book that I'm drawn to, and it's always, I'm much more interested in spiritual development, books, self-help than other kind of reads. But Marianne Williamson was
I haven't read
definitely.
her yet. I need to read her. I haven't read her.
Yes. Yeah. I loved Return to Love. I actually have the copy I got in 1990. Embraced by the Light was one of those books that just, opened my mind to a whole nother way of thinking. It's about a woman who had a really intense near-death experience, which I think is pretty cool. There's so many people that I read about who have near-death experiences who are atheists. They don't have, any belief in the afterlife, and they have the most incredible experiences of the afterlife. So those are books that definitely pique my curiosity. Wayne Dyer, huge fan of Wayne Dyer. It was interesting. Another author who I love, Melody Beatty, she wrote Codependent No More. And this was interesting. This was, 1990. This was one of the first self-help books that I had read. And I was just perusing, looking at the, psychology section at the time. And I didn't even know what I was looking for. I just wanted to see what they had. And this guy came up to me and reached to the bottom shelf and took this book. And he said, "Here, this book will change your life." And I was like, all right, with that, you got to buy the book. So, and it really did. There was a lot of things about just family of origin things and just, behavior.
I'm going to find this lady now, Suzanne Geisman or something. Geisman or something like that.
Geisman?
Yeah. She's the one. She's the one that talks about like the one I was watching a YouTube video of her. I'm a big fan of Robert Monroe, Wayne Dyer, because these two men didn't follow anybody. They kind of did their own thing, their own exploration. They did their own research. And Bob Monroe is not going to tell you, he'll give you, he has the Monroe Institute and he gave you some technology to help you have these out-of-body experiences, but he wants you to have your own experience yourself. That way you can explore and have your own findings. Wayne Dyer, same thing, right? Like he never, when the law of attraction, The Secret was coming out, like he stayed away from that because like that's not what he's about, right? Like he's really about spirituality and being like in tune.
Yes.
and being proof of like co-creating with the universe, not just trying to jump on a bandwagon,
Exactly.
Wayne Dyer and I share a birthday, by the way.
You do?
Yeah,
Oh, so you got a birthday
man.
coming up, right? Oh,
Well, May
isn't that
10th. May 10th.
May 10th.
May 10th.
I thought, no, he passed in August. You're right. You also share a birthday with Bono.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
That's interesting.
And I'm May 20th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
That's
I
awesome.
know. Yeah, pretty
We're
cool.
right there. We're on the same wavelength.
Yes, no wonder. Taurus, right? Yeah. That's great. No, Wayne is amazing.
Yeah, Wayne, he's awesome. I don't even know where I was going with that.
And Bob Monroe. You said, yeah.
Well, I was watching Bob Monroe or the Monroe Institute, and I saw Suzanne on there. It was like a random video. Just picked it up, clicked on it. But I've been reading Paul Selig and his new book, The Kingdom, and that's where the Christ consciousness. Like, if you read, what is it?
What do I have? Well, is it Word? I Am Word. No. And then I also have.
There's Realization, Alchemy. There's a bunch of them, but they talk about that, and they're leading up to how you can live your life knowing this knowledge of what we are one with Source, the Christ consciousness, the Christ, and be in the kingdom every day. Like, be in the kingdom, but you're going to have to look at everything. Like, everything has a vibration. Everything is from there. And Suzanne made a really good like metaphor because she channels this Sanaya being, like kind of like Abraham Hicks, like a group of spirit guides, and she's really good. She used to be a naval officer, right? And she lost her stepdaughter, and she started finding herself more spiritual because she's very left brain analytical. And now she's channeling. Now she's like all about this spiritual work. And one thing that she says, like the metaphor that I just love to death, I'm sorry for prolonging.
No, I wrote her name down. I can't wait.
Is that we are the ocean, right? Like, we're all the ocean. We are the ocean making waves. That's it, right? Like, so each wave is us. Like, each wave, you're a wave, I'm a wave. But at the end of the day, we're just the ocean. We're all one.
That's right.
waving, like,
Oneness.
yeah.
Mhm.
And people who put a term or a name on God try to put that inside of a box and say, this is God. This is what I believe God to be, because of the conditioning that we've all had, society conditioning, religious conditioning, dogma. You don't fully understand the concept of it. I don't fully understand the concept of God, right? Like what that is. I'm talking about, everything, all of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
One grain of sand contains this source of God
Right.
in the
Yeah.
universe. And it's just so powerful. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
No, it's so powerful. And, what I also read from the Course in Miracles is that we are all one. And so when we are, when we look at each other as enemies, or there's, you want to cause hurt or harm, it's like when you believe in separation, I guess, is when, I don't know, I'm not saying it correctly, but separation is fear, and it's the opposite of love. And so, when you think about even the U2 song One, we are all one, and we are all oneness, and we are all oneness in the likeness of God. But it is such it's a huge concept to wrap your head around. And I believe that to be true. This oneness, and God is in, and Wayne Dyer will say that too. God is in, the blade of grass, and God is everywhere. But in our day-to-day lives, at least I don't, that takes me just having some conscious connectedness to fully embrace that. Because otherwise it's just like you go along your way, and you're doing your thing. And then maybe you find yourself, I don't know, like, you're in the car and you are just like, you jerk, or something like that. I don't call anyone names, but even if I think it, I try to retract, because it's not energy I want to put out there.
I call people names all the time by accident. But I'm learning not to. I'm learning to see them as that vibration, like just like me, right? Like, what is reality really? I mean, you read a lot of physics books and quantum mechanics, and it's like, what is reality?
Right.
We are all energy vibrating. This table that I'm sitting, this chair is vibrating at a frequency that it becomes matter,
Right.
and what is it? There's so many, like what is it, double slit experiment, where they had one photon acts as a wave in a particle. Like, it's insane. Like, what is reality? And it's subjective, and that's how you have to look at it, and not judge, right? Like, just because somebody tells you something doesn't mean it's correct, right? Like,
correct.
I could go do your own research, and I tell people that all the time. Just because I say something that sounds good on my podcast doesn't mean that it's truth. Like, go research it for yourself, and when it triggers that heart center, then you kind of say, all right, well, there's something to this.
It's really cool. It's interesting how many, their different avenues speak to our heart centers. And I think that's just a wonderful, fascinating mystery. There's Buddhism, there's Catholicism, there's, just Christianity, there's just naturism, there's this. And I don't think God, not to box God, but it's not a one size fits all. There's so many different ways in which God wants us to experience our spiritual selves, life, God. It's all part of our spiritual growth, our spiritual development. And I feel like then, when we pass, it's like, oh, it all comes, it's all there right in front of you. And that's what I find so fascinating when you hear about people's near-death experiences. It's just then what they do experience. It is interesting because there's not one. They don't name it. They can't even name it. It's it's a feeling, an expression. It's love, basically, is we hear so often. If you've read a lot of books on people who've had near-death experiences, they come back and the main thing they're talking about is love.
Yeah, it's like ineffable. Like, you can't even put it in words. Like, there's no language.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
That's right.
Like, what is our language? And Suzanne does this, like, another analogy, metaphor, just reminded me of that. Like, she's like, if you think about the entire alphabet, like, it has, it's letters, right? Like, and out of those letters, you can create words, and those words, you can create a book, or you can create, language. And she's like, you're just a letter in the alphabet.
Mm,
Still, you know what I mean? And you
yeah.
can create so many different words with just you. And you got to kind of go back to that where, you study all of the different types of literature that's out there. And again, you kind of go with what feels right. You don't necessarily have to buy in. You don't need to go to an ashram over in India and study 6 months and meditate. I mean, it would definitely lead to enlightenment, but doesn't mean it's your path. I think in the West, just how we are as a society, I mean, it's a challenge. It's, but I accept that challenge. Like we live in a materialistic world, and we live in the West, and we live in the United States, and I have 3 kids and a day job, and it's like, how can you
Right.
find spirituality in that? How can you find God in that? If and again, not to put it in a box and say, all right, well, how do you find him? It's not necessarily a him, it's source and the
Right.
cosmos, but how do you connect with that and realize that you're a part of that? And the way I did it was podcast and read a shit ton of books.
And you talked about being in nature. I think that's a huge component. Sometimes if I'm out taking a run on the beach, I won't even bring, my headphones. I'm like, I love listening to music, like if I'm taking a run or a bike ride, but at the same time, sometimes I'm just like, just listen, just don't speak, quiet the mind, because that might be our only opportunity during the day, during our busy lives, where we just have a chance to just connect and just listen. And I think that's the hard thing about the West is compared to the East, is that there's so much more of an emphasis on nurturing your spirit in the East, and rest, and taking care of your body and your soul. And I think that is one of the positives that have come out of the pandemic, is people didn't have to commute the same way that they were. And even though there was all this fear at the front end, and a lot of people went through so much suffering and loss, and still are, but it just, so many people I've spoken to, it's just given them time to connect with their spirits. And then I feel like maybe your day job might not totally align with how you want to spend 8 hours of your day, but it gives you that connection. And when you feel that connection, it's you can find joy, in these other little things that we're doing, or the hard work and raising small kids and doing all that. But yeah, kudos to you for
Kudos
3
to you.
children. Yeah.
Kudos to you. Kudos to us all. We're all the
Yeah.
same, right? I'm
Right.
talking to myself over there.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Amy, this has been awesome. How can people find out more about you?
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. You can go to amyo'keefe.com, or you can follow me on Instagram, which is Amy_O'Keefe, spelled OK, double E, double F, E at the end. And yeah, love to hear from you all.
Last question, kind of big.
Uh-oh.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I want to help people manifest miracles in their life. That's what I want, whether it be through healing, through trauma, grief. And this picture really inspired me to believe in the extraordinary in life. And it was a miracle in my eyes, more of my thinking and believing, and in expanding your consciousness. So I want to help others do the same.
I love it, Amy. Thank you so much for joining. This has been fantastic.
Thank you. All right. You have a good summer. I'll see you hopefully soon.